Mark Rennell stepped into the wide corridor of Galaxis Trade Station, feeling the familiar mix of metal, spice, noise, and alien languages filling the air. He had visited many stations across the galaxy, but Galaxis always felt different. People rushed everywhere, carrying glowing crates, strange plants, mechanical tools, and foods from 100 worlds. Traders shouted prices. Hovercarts hummed past. Someone played a sharp, flute-like instrument that kept changing pitch. Mark was a simple human traveler, nothing special, at least in his own eyes. He had left Earth years ago to serve on distant colonies, and after finishing his latest job, escorting a cargo ship, he wanted only one thing: warm food and quiet. As he walked toward the food district, his nose caught a familiar smell. Something soft, warm, and a bit sweet. It reminded him of bread from home, even though he knew it wasn't bread. His steps slowed. He followed the smell to a small stall squeezed between two large metal shops. The stall barely had space for 3 customers. The sign above it flickered like it was about to break. Behind the counter stood an old alien. The alien was thin, with long folded ears and gentle yellow eyes that looked tired but kind. His skin was pale blue, almost silver in certain light. His hands shook slightly as he arranged bowls on the counter. Mark had seen his species before Veriland's long-lived but fragile in old age. This one must have been more than a century old. The old alien noticed Mark and smiled softly. "Welcome, traveler. Would you like something warm? I have fresh starroot stew. Very mild for humans." Mark smiled back. "Yeah, that sounds good." The alien nodded, lifting a pot with careful, slow movements. His hands trembled so much that Mark worried the pot might slip, but the old alien managed to keep control. Mark placed a few credits on the counter. Before the alien could serve the stew, a loud, sharp voice cut through the air. "Roten, step away from the stall." Mark turned. 2 tall alien guards in dark armor marched toward the stall. They looked strong and impatient. Their armor carried the purple emblem of the station authority. One had a long scar across his jaw. The other carried a metal rod that hummed with electricity. Roten, the old vendor, froze. The pot almost slipped from his hands, but he caught it at the last moment. "Guards," Roten said with difficulty. I have customers. What is the problem?" "Your stall tax is overdue," the scarred guard said. "You were given 7 cycles to pay. You failed. This stall is now closed." Mark frowned. "Overdue? He seems honest. Maybe there's a mistake." The guards ignored him. Roten's hands shook even more. "I paid the tax last cycle. I filed the payment in the system myself." The second guard stepped behind the old alien and grabbed his shoulder. The grip was rough, and Roten winced. "Records show no payment. You lied. Now move." Mark's muscles tightened. He stepped forward slightly, placing himself closer to the counter. "Hey," Mark said calmly. "He's elderly. Take it easy." The scarred guard glared at him. "This is station business. Humans have no authority here." Mark stayed calm. "I'm not trying to start a fight, just saying you could be gentle." The guard didn't like that. His jaw tightened. Roten looked down, defeated. Please check again." "The system must have lost the record." "We checked." The guard snapped. "It's not there. You didn't pay." Mark watched the old alien's shoulders slump. He looked like a tired leaf that had been crushed too many times. Something in Mark's chest tightened. He didn't like bullies no matter what species they were. The second guard pulled Roten harder, making him stumble. The pot shook dangerously in his hands. That was enough. Mark stepped fully between them. The guards immediately stiffened. "Let him stand," Mark said. His voice was calm but strong. If he made a mistake, solve it without hurting him. The guards stepped closer, towering over him. They were bigger than him by a full head. But Mark didn't step back. "You are interfering," the scarred guard growled. Mark held his ground. Do you have proof he didn't pay? The guard tapped a device. System shows no payment. Let me see, Mark said. The guard hesitated. Humans were unusual, but some of them carried military clearance codes that allowed limited access to public systems. If Mark wasn't lying, refusing him could cause trouble. Finally, the guard thrust the device toward him. Mark studied the screen. It showed no payment, yes, but something else bothered him. There was a gap in the transaction logs, just a tiny one, barely noticeable. A half cycle of missing data. That usually meant one thing. Someone had tampered with the record. Mark looked up. The guard snorted. Station logs glitch sometimes. Not like this, Mark said. A full half cycle missing? That means someone erased something. The guards exchanged looks. Uneasy ones. Roten swallowed hard. I told you, I paid. Someone has been targeting my stall. Who? Mark asked. Roten hesitated, then whispered. The merchant Gerlach. He wants this location. He has been pressuring me for months. Do you have proof? Mark asked gently. Roten lowered his eyes. No, only fear. The guard shrugged. That sounds like excuses. The stall is closed. He leaves. They reached for Roten again. Mark blocked their path for the second time. His voice became firm. Stop. The guards pushed forward, trying to intimidate him. But Mark didn't budge. I'll pay the bill, Mark said. Roten's eyes widened. No, traveler, please. I cannot let you. Mark lifted a hand to silence him, then turned back to the guards. How much is it? The guard gave the number. It was far more than what a stall that small should owe. Mark knew it was inflated, probably on purpose. But arguing now would only make the situation worse, and Roten would suffer. Mark pulled out his credit chip and transferred the full amount. The guards' devices beeped. Payment received. The guards paused, unsure for a moment. Finally, the scarred guard spoke. The bill is paid. The stall may continue operating. He shot Mark a warning look. But interfere again, human, and we will not be lenient. The guards walked away, pushing through the crowd. The moment they were gone, Roten seemed to collapse inside himself. His shoulders sagged. His eyes watered. You should not have paid, he whispered. I cannot repay you. Mark shrugged. You don't need to. I did it because they were treating you unfairly. Roten shook his head. My people do not ignore debts. We repay every kindness. Mark smiled lightly. Then repay me by serving the stew. I'm starving. Roten gave a shaky laugh, wiping his eyes. He served Mark a bowl of warm star-root stew. Mark took the first bite. It was gentle, soft, comforting. Not exactly like bread from home, but close enough that it made him feel warm inside. Roten watched him carefully. Does it taste good? It's perfect, Mark said honestly. For a moment, the old alien smiled proudly, like he had been waiting all day to hear praise like that. The crowd slowly returned to normal. Some aliens glanced at Mark with curiosity or surprise. Few humans interfered in local disputes. Even fewer stood up to the station guards. Roten leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. Mark shrugged. He can talk to me anytime. I'm not hard to find. Roten shook his head. He does not talk. He strikes from the shadows. Mark finished his stew and placed the bowl back on the counter. If he has a problem, I'll deal with it. Roten stared at him for a long moment. Then he whispered, My people never forget. You have our respect now, and our loyalty. No. Mark only smiled softly. Just treat me like any customer. Roten bowed his head. No, you are more than that now. Mark didn't fully understand what the old alien meant, but he didn't push. He started walking away, blending with the flow of the market crowd. But as he moved, he felt something. A presence. Someone watching him from far behind. Someone who had been observing the entire encounter quietly, hidden among the customers and the shadows. Mark didn't turn around. He simply kept walking, listening carefully, ready for whatever came next. Whether it was Gerlach's spies, corrupt guards, or trouble of another kind, he felt it wasn't over. Not even close. And far behind him, near the flickering food stall, a pair of eyes narrowed in interest. Mark returned to Galactic trade station the next morning, walking through the long metal corridors that hummed with old engines and flickering lights. The station always felt alive around this hour. Traders rushed to open stalls. Machines rolled out crates. Steam hissed from vents. Voices overlapped, creating a giant wave of sound. But today, something felt different. Mark noticed several aliens staring at him longer than usual, whispering to each other before quickly looking away. He wasn't sure if it was good attention or bad attention. He wasn't used to fame, and he didn't want it. He only wanted to check on the old vendor and make sure he wasn't being harassed again. As he approached Roten's stall, he breathed a small sigh of relief. The stall was open. The old alien stood behind the counter, carefully stirring a pot of warm stew. His movements looked steadier this time, like he had slept well for the first time in days. When Roten noticed Mark, his eyes brightened. "Ah, traveler. You came back. Just wanted breakfast," Mark said with a small smile. "And to make sure you're okay." "I am better," Roten said. "Much better. Thanks to you." Mark sat on one of the small metal stools. "I didn't do much." "You did more than enough," the old alien replied softly. Before Mark could answer, he noticed something odd. Several tall figures stood far behind the stall, wearing long cloaks with silver patterns on the sleeves. Their eyes were focused on Roten and on Mark. He leaned closer. "Friends of yours?" Roten looked nervous. "Yes and no." "What does that mean?" "They are members of my clan," Roten whispered. "They arrived last night. I sent for them." Mark blinked. "Why?" "To tell them about you." Mark choked slightly on the stew he had begun eating. "Why me?" "It was just a tax dispute." "To you, maybe," Roten said. "But to us, it was a matter of honor." Before Mark could ask more, one of the cloaked figures approached. The alien was tall, strong-looking, with pale silver-blue skin like Roten's but younger and sharper. His eyes were darker, filled with focus. He bowed his head slightly toward Mark. "You are the human who defended Elder Roten," the alien said in a deep voice. "I defended an old guy from being pushed around," Mark corrected gently. "Nothing more." The tall alien nodded slowly. "To us, that is not nothing. Roten is the last elder of our lineage. Many of us believed him gone or lost. When he called for help, we came." Mark looked at Roten. "You're important?" Roten smiled sadly. "I once was. A long time ago." The tall alien placed a hand on his chest. "My name is Varek. I speak for our clan." Mark stood up out of respect. "Mark Rennell." Varek studied him for a moment. "We owe you a debt." "No debt," Mark said quickly. "Really, I didn't help him for a reward." "That is exactly why the debt is real," Varek replied. Mark sighed. "Look, I appreciate the gesture, but it's fine." But Varek didn't argue further. Instead, he stepped aside, allowing the rest of the clan to move closer. There were 5 of them. They carried long metal cases on their backs and looked strong, disciplined, and united. Roten spoke again, softly. "They are here because they wish to protect me from whoever erased the tax record." Mark nodded. "About that, I think it's that merchant Gerlach." "Yes," Roten whispered. "He wants this location. He already forced many small vendors to leave. I figured. And he will not stop. Not now. Mark sighed. Then let him come. I can handle a greedy merchant. See. Roten shook his head. You do not understand, traveler. Gerlach does not fight with his own hands. He sends others. He buys guards. He buys criminals. He buys shadows. Mark frowned. Then I'll shine a light. The old alien smiled weakly. Humans. Always bold. Before Mark could answer, a loud crash echoed through the market. Everyone turned. A group of thugs marched straight toward Roten's stall. They were large, wearing mismatched armor plates and carrying stun rods. At their center stood a shorter alien with green-tinted skin and expensive clothes, Gerlach. Roten stiffened. Varek and the clan instantly stepped in front of him. Mark stood beside them. Gerlach smirked when he saw the human. You again. The outsider who thinks he can play hero. Mark crossed his arms. Morning. Problem? Yes. Gerlach said loudly, so the crowd would hear. You interfered with station business. You protected someone who breaks rules. You paid a false tax for a stall that doesn't deserve to exist. Mark stayed calm. Funny. The only false thing I see here is you. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Gerlach's smug smile faltered. You dare insult me? You dare bully an old man, Mark said. So yes. Gerlach gestured to his thugs. Teach him. Respect. The thugs stepped forward, weapons ready. But Varek's clan moved faster. Before Mark could even lift his hands, two of the thugs were disarmed, their rods sliding across the floor. Another thug stumbled backward as one of the cloaked clan members twisted his wrist. A fourth found himself pinned to a stall wall by a sharp, silent movement. Mark didn't even need to fight something he found both impressive and surprising. Gerlach stepped back, shocked. Virak stepped forward. We are Roten's clan, and he is under our protection. Gerlach pointed a shaking finger. This is illegal. You can't form private armies on the station. Viharek's eyes narrowed. You hired private thugs. We defend our elder. There is a difference. The crowd murmured in agreement. Gerlach's fear turned to anger. You will all pay for this. Mark stepped forward. Actually, you're the one who's going to pay. Gerlach glared. How dare a human speak like he owns this station? Mark interrupted. Because I found the incomplete transaction logs, and I backed them up before the guards walked away. I sent the files to the station authority this morning. Gerlach froze. You... Signed. Time-stamped. Verified. Mark said. They know someone erased the payment. They're tracing who did it. Verified. Mark 7. Gerlach's face turned pale. You can't prove it was me. It doesn't have to be me who proves it, Mark said. The station council is already reviewing your account. They'll find the fake payments you forced from other vendors too. Gerlach stumbled backward. You have no right. Roten spoke for the first time, his voice quiet but firm. He has more right than you ever had. He showed honor. You showed greed. 2. The crowd broke into whispers again. Some vendors stepped closer, looking at Gerlach with cold eyes. They too had suffered, and they finally saw someone standing up. Gerlach tried to retreat, but a group of station officers arrived. Real officers, not the corrupted guards from yesterday. They surrounded Gerlach and his thugs. Gerlach, the lead officer announced. You are under investigation for financial tampering, intimidation of vendors, and abuse of station systems. You will come with us. Gerlach protested loudly, but it didn't matter. The officers dragged him away. The moment he disappeared into the metal corridor, the market let out a collective breath of relief. Roten sagged into his stool. It is over. Finally. Roten second. Mark patted the counter gently. You're safe now. But Varek shook his head. No. You are safe now. Mark blinked. Me? Yes, Virak said. Once Gerlach is removed, many of our people will return. The market will grow again. But it was you who changed the direction of this place. You acted when others stayed silent. Well, Mark shifted awkwardly. I just helped someone in trouble. And that, Virak said, is what makes you different. Roten reached across the counter with trembling hands and held Mark's arm lightly. We wish to give you something. A gift our people give, only to those who show true honor. Mark raised an eyebrow. I don't need a gift. Roten shook his head. It is our way. And you must accept. Virak opened one of the long metal cases and pulled out a silver token with glowing lines carved across the surface. It hummed gently, like it carried a quiet life inside it. This is a lifelong market pass, Virak said. It grants you free access, free services, and free protection from our clan, across any station where our people live. Mark stared at it in surprise. That's too much. Roten smiled kindly. It is exactly enough. Mark took the token slowly. The metal felt warm, almost like it recognized him. He closed his fingers around it. Thank you, he said softly. Roten nodded. No, thank you. The clan members bowed to him before stepping back to help rebuild and secure the stall. Nearby vendors approached, each thanking Mark in their own languages. Some offered him food. Others offered repairs, tools, or simple smiles. Mark felt strangely overwhelmed. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't special. He had only stood up for someone who couldn't defend himself. But maybe, sometimes that was enough. Hours later, when the crowd thinned and Roten's stall grew quiet again, Mark sat with a fresh bowl of stew, feeling peaceful. Roten sat beside him. You changed my life, traveler. Mark shook his head. You changed mine. I didn't expect today to go like this. The old alien laughed gently. Life is strange. One moment, you think you are alone. The next, someone stands beside you. Mark looked around the market. It felt brighter, livelier. But maybe that was just in his mind. Finally, he stood up. I should go, but I'll return tomorrow. You will always have a place here, Roten said, warmly. As Mark walked away, he felt eyes watching him again. But this time, they weren't hostile. They were grateful, respectful. The shadow that had watched him yesterday was gone. In its place were open faces, hopeful voices, and a market that had begun to believe that humans, small, strange, unpredictable humans, could be something more than outsiders. Mark smiled to himself. Maybe humans really did have a place in the galaxy. And maybe sometimes, standing up for one old alien could change everything.